This afternoon, right before noon, I was sitting in a rundown middle Mediterranean restaurant with an acquaintance that I've known for around 5 years. This morning, she messaged me and asked if I wanted to go to the gym with her because she didn't have any friends to go with. And I'm a person that is a creature of habit. You're going to find me at the same place at the same time every single day for the rest of my life. I don't like breaking from my routine. I don't like leaving my house. I don't really like anything that takes me away from the things that I like to do, which is practically nothing. But I was sitting there and we were talking, and she kept bringing up certain points. And I kept looking at her and thinking to myself, she's the embodiment of the proletariat. She has no money. She drives a prole car. She's worked in call centers her whole life. She's never amounted to anything. She's bounced around the entire country, living here and there, in toxic relationships with people who didn't care about her. The relationship between her and her parents has fallen apart to the point where there's really no home to go back to. And I think many of us fall into this category where there is nowhere to go home. And so we spend our lives lost, isolated, and afraid. And I think it makes us perfect candidates for dead end jobs. Because where are we supposed to go? We can't go home. We can't stay with friends. There is no place out there that wants us. And it was something that I was actually thinking about this afternoon on my second trip to the gym, was how sometimes we end up being no one's type. As I was walking on the treadmill, I kept looking around me and thinking to myself, this is a perfect place for misfits. I'm surrounded by overweight, unattractive people that are trying really hard to achieve something that they're never going to get. No matter how hard most of these people try that were around me, they're never going to be attractive. They're never going to be in shape. Their personalities cannot be fixed. And a lot of that stems from not knowing you have a bad personality. And for some of us, I know I have a toxic personality. I've known this since I was in kindergarten. I was never going to be anyone's type. And that's why I spent my entire life alone. That's why I don't have relationships with other people. That's why on the average day I don't talk to anyone. I just go to my job, put my head down, then I come home and I sit in my roach infested studio apartment 7 days a week. But with that said, I put all of what I just said to you guys into a paragraph, and these are the talking points that I got. So, the first thing it said is, this may not be suitable for this program. And I thought, well, that's a nice disclaimer. Well, let's get into our first talking point. So, the allure and danger of isolation retreat into their minds as a coping mechanism. Today, while we discussed how I don't need a car, I've always worked close enough to the university where I could ride my bike. I've always had a job where I could take a bus or walk to work. So owning a car for the first time in my adult in my adult life wasn't necessary. I've lived inside of my head and shut off the entire time that I've pretty much been alive. You retreat into your mind because there's nowhere else to go. Physically, most of us can't just decide that we're not going to go to work tomorrow and we're going to go on a fabulous vacation. That doesn't happen unless your parents are wealthy and you're living at home and they just want to bring you along. But for most of us, the only place that we have to go is into our minds. And we live inside there because there's nothing else. There's no one or nothing we want to do. And so we just live in there. If I could sleep 24 hours a day and just live in my nightmares, that's where I would stay. Unfortunately, there's this thing called money, and I need it in order to not be on the street. But aside from that, there's nothing in this world for me. There never has been. I know that at my age, my toxic personality is going to scare off anyone. Men like myself, tens of millions of angry men just beating it, are out there right now. And for a lot of them, they don't know how to be alone. And this is the problem with men out there. Now, I'm not even saying this about young men anymore. I'm talking about middle aged men that don't know how to be alone. They're full of depression, they're agitated, they're stressed. And the one thing that they feel is like they have no connection to reality. So we climb up into our dome, and that's where we stay. There's no other place. There's no physical place for us to go. And if we can't do that, then we're not going to be around for very much longer. Talking point number 2, the echo chamber of the mind. Isolation can amplify negative thoughts and insecurities when there's no outside perspective to challenge them. I think this comes down to what you think on a daily basis. Most of us live a life in which we don't have a nice place to live. We don't have people to spend our free time with, and we don't have job security. We spend our days being worried about what's going to happen to us next, and rightfully so. As I say, if you're not scared enough right now of this job economy, you're not scared enough, because one minute you're going to be going to work and the next minute you're going to come to work and the doors are closed. That's actually happened to me before, where you come to a job, they don't say anything to anyone, and you look inside and there's no one in there. Corporation shut down overnight. It happens. Sometimes they don't want the employees to figure out what's going on. They don't want the employees to all jump ship at once. So rather than telling them, you just show up at work and there's a sign on the door that says don't bother. And if you haven't experienced it, it's a very strange thing. But there are some telltale signs. Like when I was working for Allied Waste, suddenly they cut travel, they cut the free food, and they started cutting positions. Suddenly you would walk by a department and there wouldn't be anyone there. So they were trying to keep what was happening to a minimum to dissuade people from running away, because we're aware of the futility of an ordinary life. One minute you can be doing great. Perfect example for this. A month ago when my channel got demonetized, I was floating around on YouTube. Everything seemed fine. Then it was around noon and I got a message. This is all I got. You are being demonetized for reused content. And if any of the thousands of people that used to follow me know, it's like, what does that mean? Every video that I make, I have almost 50 videos right now on the channel, is a unique creation. But that's what they chose to take me down with. For the next week, I felt strange, because this is where I come. This is what I feel. Doing YouTube feels more like my real job. It's an actual place where I can go, where I feel like I have a calling to make videos about reality. Because when you're a dystopian entertainment channel, you tell people the things that they won't tell themselves. Like, you do have a bad job. You are stuck in a worthless relationship with a person that doesn't care about you. Your parents don't think you're very bright. Your friends don't like you because they're not really your friends. And most of your school teachers knew that you were a loser at a very young age. Teachers know. Teachers can figure out, even as young as kindergarten, whether or not you're going to be successful. Sometimes it's just based on how ugly you are. Even teachers discriminate against ugly looking children. It's not, I don't think it's a conscious effort, but they pay attention to the more attractive children. Why? Because they're the children that are most likely going to have successful careers. The rest of us, we were all destined to work in the call centers, in the warehouses, at the car washes, in places where our ugliness was part of the uniform. You walk into any retail place in America, and it's full of people who couldn't do better. Sometimes it's just not given the opportunity. You may have the same skill set, you may have the same education, but as long as that person is more attractive, more likable, their personality is more outgoing than yours, chances are the person right next to you is going to get that job. And you will be passed up for promotions, or you won't be hired, or your career isn't going anywhere based on something you couldn't control. Most of us can't control our horrible personalities. And other people feel that sense that today, while I was sitting with this person, she was oozing depression onto the floor. Like if she were taking a number one and depression was coming out and pooling around her feet. That's how bad, that's how toxic it felt sitting in that little dank Mediterranean restaurant with her with no one else there. That's how you know a restaurant's bad. It's Sunday, it's lunchtime, and no one's in there. This is why I don't think the restaurant industry is going to survive in the next year or two. The prices were outrageous, the food was terrible, and the company was even worse. All right, moving on to our third talking point here. So, breaking free from self imposed isolation. Emphasize the importance of facing the world to experience moments of joy, connection, and personal growth. There is no joy in, in waking up and realizing you're still part of the proletariat. The joy of waking up in the morning is when you can wake up that day and tell yourself, I can do whatever I want. Remember, a man chooses, a slave obeys. That statement, the first time I saw that statement in the first Bioshock game, I was blown away by that because it's true. A slave has to go to work. A slave lives for food and shelter. A man chooses what he's going to do that day. Whether it's going to be to bang his hot wife, to go on a road trip, to go do something he wants. Why? Because he's a man. He's not a person chained to a 9 to 5 job that doesn't give a rat's you know what about whether he feels good about being at work that day. The fact that we're all in this together as the proletariat, we have no choice but to work every single day because a slave obeys. A slave has to go to where he needs to be in order to be able to provide basic needs. Do you think I enjoy living on cell block B of this apartment complex and being part of the daily work release program in America that releases its slaves out into the wild in order to generate tiny incomes? No, the slave obeys. Every day, all you do is build wealth for people who don't care about you. Will you ever become a capitalist as part of the proletariat? I would say that the magic 8 ball says hell no. Is that intentional? Hell yeah. Can you escape it? No. You don't wake up one day and say, you know what? I'm sorry, reality, but homie, don't play that. I know I just dated myself. I know you guys are going to be like, oh my God, that guy, I know where that quote's from. But that's life. And life for people who don't have a choice about where they're going to work, who they're going to work with, and whom they're going to be in a relationship with. Because, like anything else, being part of the proletariat means you get to ride the thing that you don't want to. By this, I mean Susie. You drive the prole approved car, you ride the prole approved woman, and you spend your days in pro-approved housing. Nothing about your life is designed to be comfortable. And it's intentional because a man chooses to have a high income. He chooses to be well invested in stock, in real estate, and having that passive income that can only be generated by the capitalist. The proletariat has very few choices when it comes to life. And most of us don't like the pretend choices we have. It's an illusion of freedom that's forced upon us that we're supposed to embrace. Because if you can't be a winner, by default, society considers you to be a loser. That's why there's such a huge emphasis in our world that you have to be a business owner. You have to be part of the class of people on this planet that exploit the bejeebers out of everyone else in order to extract resources from them that get pushed onto you. Remember what I said a few weeks ago? The proletariat is the grapes. The job creators crush the grapes in order to get the wine. Not one beep was given about how much the grapes had to suffer to be turned into wine. All the job creator did was he stood on top of the grapes and he smashed his big, stinky, ugly feet across the backs of the grapes all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for eternity. We are the grapes. We produce things. We make it possible for the job creators to have nice things. But we're not allowed to have nice things. We're not even allowed to have good things inside of our minds. Because every time you think like me, every moment of the day that you're thinking like me, you're committing a thought crime against a society that claims to have all of the resources and all of the opportunities for everyone to stomp grapes. But you and I both know that's not real. We're not stomping the grapes. Our big ugly feet are never going to be large enough to stomp grapes. We know who public enemy number one is. We know the direct cause of our poverty, and it's rich people. It's always rich people because they're heartless, they're cruel, and they're well aware that sharing their toys with the proletariat isn't part of the rich guy playbook. Everything in our world is designed to make certain that there's 99% losers and 1% winners. And if that cannot change in any conceivable way, those are the rules to life. Either you're born to the right class or you become a grape. And believe me, it hurts to get stomped on all day by the job creators. At the end of the day, your boys can't take any more stomping. But guess what? You're going to wake up tomorrow, you're going to open your eyes, and you're going to respawn right back inside of the bucket to be stomped on all day. Right now, we're only a few hours away from having to return back to the bucket. And most of us aren't happy. If you're like me, Sunday afternoon is not a good time for you. You feel the anxiety, the tightness in your chest, and the fact that you wish that instead of having a work week that was 5 days long, that it was just, I'm a huge advocate of the 1 hour, 1 day a week work week. That's who I am. Because I don't think we should do this to people. Earth shouldn't be a slave planet like it is. But Earth is a slave planet. And everyone who doesn't believe that is either living in an alternative reality or has tuned out so far that they don't see the true nature and the disgusting nature of this planet. Everyone who's not rich has to work, and everyone who has to work has to be crushed. And that's just the way life is. All right, what did I put into toxic positivity today? The more of the acquaintance conversation today. Today, as I sat there in that disgusting restaurant. Lifelong failure was what I saw written all over her face. She has no real friends. She has no real job. But she was still optimistic about how I could change my life for the better. And I just looked at her and I thought, you know what? You're an attractive person that's never had to pay for the reality of being an ugly person. People will always treat you better than they treat someone who's not considered traditionally attractive. The rest of us fall into the metaphorical abyss of being down there and down on our luck. Nobody wants to have ugly friends. No one wants to be around people without money. No one wants to be around people who don't meet the traditional bar of what it means to be successful. It's just the more you touch poverty, the more likely you are to stay stuck in it. I say that a lot in my videos, but it's very true. Ask yourself, when was the last time you got to hang out with rich people? I can tell you from my experience, it's never happened before. And as with most things in your life, if you get to middle age and it hasn't happened yet, just like many of us who spend time with a tug of war in our pants, that's just the way life is. Life isn't fair. And it never was meant to make life was never meant to make you feel good. That's why I make these videos. So every day you can come here and feel bad and know it's normal.